The night began like a dream, or at least that's how it was supposed to feel. My husband had spent days bragging about an exclusive dinner with his wealthy friends, people he admired and desperately wanted to impress. He insisted I come along, painting it as an opportunity to show me off. I agreed, thinking it might be a chance to share in his world, to feel included in the circle of people he valued so highly. But what unfolded that evening was not admiration, nor celebration. It was humiliation on a scale I never imagined, and it left a scar that no amount of money could erase. When we arrived at the restaurant, I could feel the air was different. It wasn't just the grandeur of the chandelier-lit dining hall, or the way waiters in crisp uniforms hovered near each table. It was the way his friends carried themselves, dripping with confidence and entitlement, their laughter booming as if the entire room belonged to them. I felt small but tried to stay poised, reminding myself that my husband wanted me there. Yet as the evening went on, it became painfully clear that my presence was not to uplift but to ridicule. I remember sitting beside him, quietly listening to conversations about vacations in private villas, cars that cost more than houses, and business deals worth millions. My husband seemed to thrive in that environment, leaning in, laughing loudly, matching their arrogance. I didn't belong, but I smiled politely, trying not to let my discomfort show. Then, in the middle of it all, one of his friends asked about me, about my background, what I did, where I came from. Before I could answer, my husband cut in with a smirk. He looked right at them and said, "She's nothing special really. Honestly, she's a bit of a disgrace compared to the rest of us." The words hit me like a slap across the face. The table erupted in uncomfortable chuckles, and I felt the blood rush to my cheeks. My husband didn't even look at me. He was too busy basking in their laughter, as though my humiliation was his ticket to their approval. I sat there in silence, a knot forming in my throat, too stunned to respond. The more the conversation continued, the more invisible I became, as if my only role was to be the butt of his cruel joke. Dinner went on for hours. Course after course of overpriced dishes I could barely enjoy passed in front of me. Every bite turned to ash in my mouth. The laughter around me grew louder, but in my chest was only heaviness, the kind that made it hard to breathe. And then came the final blow. As dessert was cleared away and the waiter placed the check neatly at the center of the table, my husband reached for his jacket. He stood, patted his pocket, and with the most casual tone said, "She's got it." Before I could process what he meant, he leaned down, kissed me on the cheek as if everything was perfectly normal, and walked out of the restaurant. Time seemed to freeze. His friends stared at me, some with smirks, others with raised eyebrows, waiting to see if I'd protest. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My hands trembled as I reached for the slip of paper, and when I saw the number, my heart nearly stopped. $5,000. The bill was more than what some people make in months, and here I was, left to cover it alone. My husband was gone. The people who had laughed at my humiliation now looked at me with thinly veiled amusement, as though this was entertainment, another story for them to tell later. The waiter hovered patiently, and I felt a deep, suffocating shame. I had no choice but to hand over my card. My chest burned as I signed the slip, each stroke of the pen heavier than the last. By the time I left the restaurant, the night air felt cold against my skin, and tears blurred the streetlights around me. I had never felt so small, so discarded, so utterly betrayed. In the days that followed, the humiliation replayed in my mind like a cruel film on a loop. I questioned everything. My marriage, my worth, the years I had poured into supporting him, only to be reduced to nothing in front of strangers. But the more I thought, the more a different fire began to burn inside me. My husband wanted me to feel powerless. He wanted me to be his stepping stone, a prop to mock in front of people he deemed more important. What he never expected was that I would rise from that moment stronger than before. I started piecing together the truth about him, truths he had tried to keep hidden, the debts he glossed over, the lies he told to appear wealthier than he really was, the favors he begged from the same friends he flaunted me in front of. I had stood by him through it all, quietly cleaning up his messes. But now, I was done being silent. Slowly, methodically, I began to make sure others knew the truth too. His carefully crafted image began to crack. The same friends who once laughed at me started whispering about him instead, questioning the stories he told, the wealth he pretended to have. The breaking point came when he tried to host another gathering, boasting about his success, only to be met with cold shoulders and dismissive glances. He couldn't understand why the respect he craved was slipping away, but I knew. Actions have consequences, and betrayal has a way of turning back on itself. For me, the healing came not from watching him fall, but from reclaiming my own dignity. I realized I didn't need to prove myself to people like his friends, nor did I need to shrink in the shadow of a man who thrived on belittling me. I walked away from him, not with rage but with resolve. He had humiliated me in front of the world, but in the end, he only exposed his own weakness. Looking back, that dinner was more than a humiliation. It was a turning point. It forced me to see the truth I had been avoiding. That love without respect is just control. That loyalty without dignity is just chains. And maybe the lesson for anyone listening is this. Never let someone else's desire for approval strip you of your worth. Respect is not a privilege to be begged for. It is a right to be demanded. If you ever find yourself treated as less than, remember this. Being called a disgrace says far more about them than it will ever say about you.